Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families.
And I'm Merrill Hutchinson, President of Rock Solid Families. And we are excited to have you join us as we talk all things faith, family, and fitness. A special thanks to Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency for their support of Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community one family at a time.
Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and I'm here with my most trusted best friend, Merrill.
Whoa, wait, what do I owe you for that one? What's going on here?
Well, we're talking about trust today on our show, so I thought, I'm just going to put it out there. Like, I trust you.
Well, ever since you put that GPS chip in my rear end, it's been a whole lot easier for you, hasn't it?
Oh, that is awful. I cannot believe you
That's
talked.
gross.
That's gross.
Well, that's kind of sometimes how you feel like trust has to get earned back, right?
That's true. We're going to talk about that, but no, we're not putting any chips in anybody. Okay?
No.
Speaking
Well, if
of
you
trust,
live with integrity, you don't need a GPS chip,
That's
do
right.
you?
Hun, speaking of trust, remember back in the old days when you and I were teachers and coaches and counselors, and we did the trust fall with kids?
Oh, yeah. I've done a lot of team building exercises. We did that a lot, and we would do the trust fall. And I know when team building, kind of when that first came about, really more in the early to mid 90s, the trust fall was kind of the pinnacle of the experience of team building.
Yeah. You make fun of me because you're right. It was back in the 90s. And,
yeah, it was.
Early 2000s. But I remember taking a group of 5th and 6th graders to Grundy, Virginia, to the Mountain Mission School, and we were there doing some service work, some missionary work, but we did a trust fall off of a two-story bleacher, and the kids
were you in charge of this?
I was. This is before the days of lawsuits, but it was adults having kids drop in.
Well, how many stories? Wait, go say that again.
Well, it was
two stories.
It was like 10, 12 feet high. I mean, it was pretty tall.
All right, whatever. But
so
that's really high. I'm not buying it.
Not
buying it.
But it was really tall. But it was easy when they were these little kids falling into the hands of adults. But then all of a sudden, one of the adults got a wise idea of that the adults should do it too. And that was a little different story.
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow. So,
yeah.
It's a huge topic, by the way, trust in our world today.
Yeah. And so the trust fall, the reason why it was so important, especially in team building, was the idea that you can't always carry everything on your own. You're going to need a corporate sort of operation, we call a team, to get things done.
A corporate sort of operation?
Yeah,
that
we
have
to
official.
cooperate.
Oh, gotcha.
We
okay.
have to cooperate. That's the corporate side of things. And so family is really no different. And so in our show today, we're going to kind of see, we're not going to do a trust fall, by the way, but I can see how that would go in our house right now. Oh, we missed Dad as he's flat on his back.
I'm sorry, I looked away.
Oh, Dad, was that you? Oh, you didn't say go.
Well, the lawsuits nowadays, everybody's got all these worries and concerns. So good thing that was decades ago. So everybody's safe in our hands.
The important thing about the trust fall, everybody thinks that the bigger part of the mission of teaching it is to teach that person who's falling how to trust.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is a big part of it, right? I mean,
especially if you're the one
you're
falling.
the focal point when you're up there on the ladder or the bleacher or whatever it is that you're falling off of. But where the biggest part of my work as a trainer and team building, the biggest part of my work was not actually talking to the person who was falling. It was actually talking to those that were going to be doing the catching.
Yeah, you did a lot more work with them.
Yeah, because one, that's really where the liability does come from.
Yeah.
Okay, if they mess up, somebody else is going to get hurt. They typically don't get hurt. It's the one who's falling that gets hurt. And also, they don't always understand the magnitude of what's happening, and especially if it's a shared responsibility. So a lot of times we would have 7, 8, 9, 10 people around a circle catching. And because I see that somebody's across the circle from me, I kind of like not feel as responsible sometimes. And so I don't always do my best job of understanding how I have to carry this person that's falling.
Yeah.
Okay?
So that builds that trust.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of work that goes in on both sides, the person who's falling as well as the person who is catching that person. And so we're going to really talk a little bit about what that means in our marriages. because there's always one who's falling, and there's always one that's hopefully going to be there to catch the fall.
I mean, how do you rebuild trust after someone's betrayed you? Or should you even trust them again? Whether it be a spouse, a child, a parent, a friend, a coworker, boss. You know, we get asked this, Hun, all the time. How do we forgive someone who's hurt us so deeply? And does that mean I'm supposed to just forgive that person and trust them again so they can turn around and do it to me again? So we're going to be talking about all that in today's show. But we got to pay some bills first.
Yeah, let's do this. So Maxwell Construction has been with us since the very beginning of Rock Solid Radio. We are so thankful for their support. They care about our community and want to invest in strong and healthy families. Maxwell Construction was founded in 1988 by John Maxwell. Since that time, Maxwell Construction has grown and expanded to become among the most recognized commercial construction companies in the tri-state area. If you have any kind of commercial construction need, call Maxwell Construction today at 812-537-2200.
We also want to thank Mansfield Insurance Agency, and it began in 1981 by Jim Mansfield and dedicated to the serving individuals and businesses in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So if you have any kind of insurance need, call Mansfield Insurance Agency today at 1-800-230-3927.
All right. So we also want to cover a couple of different announcements. Here at Rock Solid Families, Linda, you and I are marriage and family coaches is kind of primarily how we call ourselves. And we deal with the issue of forgiveness and trust every day in our work, especially within the marriage setting. And so because we have our hand in this a lot, I would say that we've seen a lot of different approaches, and some very successful, some not. We've also seen a lot of different attitudes that come into these problems, and we can recognize when we see the potential for success or failure. So if we can help you, if you are listening to this show and you say, man, you know, this is kind of where we're at in our relationship or in our marriage, reach out to us, man. I mean, that's what we're about here. That's why Rock Solid Families exist. So give us a call at 812-576-7625. Let's see what we can do to help you.
Yeah, there is hope and help out there for your pain. And there's healing that God wants to do in those broken places. But, Hun, like you said, we've been working with individuals and couples and families for, if we combine the two.
No, it's just, you're way too old if we do that.
I know. Over 60 years. That's older than you and I are.
We should act like we know what we're doing, but how come we don't get this right?
But since we opened our doors at Rock Solid Families 2 years ago, we've seen hundreds of families in our St. Leon office. And, Hun, a lot of them are walking in feeling super angry, super wounded, and they want to experience peace and joy, but they can't seem to find either one.
Yeah.
They seem overwhelmed and stuck. And as we peel back the onion, a lot of times we'll see that there are a lot of wounds of mistrust and unforgiveness that are really they're carrying in their doors.
Yeah. And so I think the thing, Hun, that is really important is when you read a book or you just get some basic instruction on trust and forgiveness, you don't take into account the personalities that are involved in the backstories of people and that baggage that we all bring in. And so that's why at Rock Solid Families, even though we've dealt with a lot of these different situations, everyone is different. Every situation is different. All of the backlog on their life is different, which we have to wrap our head around. Okay, how did you get to where you are? And so it's never a cut and dry, well, you just do this and everything will come back together. So don't feel like your story is something that we could not learn from and adjust from, and ultimately we could help to maybe restore your relationship, your family.
Yeah, there's nothing that's too far gone. Ideally, a relationship is restored when both people forgive each other and agree not to do the harmful behavior again. But, Hun, as you and I know, that's easier said than done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing we found to be very helpful in the healing process, Hun, I think is the very first thing we need to talk about, and that is to separate forgiveness from the idea of trust.
Oh, yes.
I think that both for the offended and for the offender, Hun, I want to share a little bit of the story because this really kind of came to mind as we were working on this show. I have a client who is a daughter, and she came to me about the worry and the fear of trusting her dad again. He had been dealing with some addiction issues for many years, and he has hurt the family over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so in her mind, how could she ever forgive him or trust him again. And so we kind of talked about separating the two, and that forgiveness is going to be something we're going to work on, and it's going to be different than the trust.
Very, very different. Very different. And I think we want to caution this because some situations and people you are not called to go back into a trusting relationship with. So let's be very clear on that, okay? There are people that are out there that relationships have been dangerous, have been abusive, have not been right. And so that is a person that we're not going to quickly say, well, you just need to trust them again, okay? And hun, so this is the separation between forgiveness and trust.
Yeah.
Forgiveness absolutely is essential.
It's not an option.
It's not an option.
And people don't want to hear that.
We are called to forgive. But
we're commanded to forgive.
I think we make that a lot harder in the sense that we act like we put parameters on it, like, well, when that person does this or when they do their part.
Right.
And so we're complicating it.
Right. And we're confusing it with trust.
Yes. Forgiveness is very much a one-sided, and hopefully we get everybody involved to do it, but it's really very much a one-sided. It is me out to the person who's offended me.
Yeah.
It is me out there saying, I release you of any responsibility towards hurting me. I'm not going to hold you accountable in terms of seeking revenge.
Okay,
I don't seek revenge any longer towards you.
You got to be careful when you hear that word responsible, because the person immediately, I can hear some people listening to this going, what do you mean they're responsible for their actions? We're not saying that.
Right.
We're saying you no longer have any power and control over me. This hurt that you did, I will not let it affect me anymore. And that's forgiveness. You know, it's a command. We're commanded to forgive regardless if the offender does or doesn't repent. God's word tells us to. Matthew 18:21 and 20 Matthew 18:21 and 22 says, therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and then remember your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. Matthew 5:23-24 said, Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? And Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. It's literally, we're called to do that regardless.
And the reason, again, we want to go back, this is not so that the other person feels better. The person that offended you,
or off the hook.
If maybe it makes them feel better when you forgive them, but that's not really the purpose. The purpose is to help relieve you of the burden that you're carrying, and the burden is, I'll use the word maybe hate, frustration, anger, fear, all of these things that you burden and carry yourself or bring yourself down. The forgiveness is more about yourself. It's very much a self-serving. For me to heal, for me to feel better, I have to get rid of this heavy weight that's on my shoulders.
It's eating you from the inside out. So we did a whole show on forgiveness just a year ago in December of 2019 called Forgiveness, and we strongly encourage you to go back to and listen to that show because remember, we're saying this is a 2-step process. Forgiving your offender, which is a biblical command, but then we're going to re-talk about today's show about working to trust that person again, because that's a whole different story. That's a 2-way street. And sometimes trust is something that must be earned and, not always restored.
Right. So the idea that, is kind of occurring to me a little bit, that we've said, the idea that I need to forgive somebody. But please, that does not mean that somebody needs to escape the consequences for their action.
Right. We'll get to that when we talk about that.
So we want to be careful. Don't go down that road in your mind of thinking, well, does that mean you don't have to pay back? No. But this is from me to you. I forgive you. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we talk about, all right, so how do we rebuild trust?
Yeah. You mentioned that word grace before, Hun. Where does that come from? What do you mean when you say we have to extend grace to people in our rebuilding of trust? I've heard you say that before.
Yeah. There's forgiveness, as we've just explained, the idea that you're no longer going to seek revenge, have harmful thoughts, or just try to get back at a person. And then there's this special thing called grace. And the way that I help my couples figure this out. Forgiveness is like this. Forgiveness says that I'm in a business deal, okay? I'm in a business deal, and the guy, let's say he steals or embezzles $50,000 from me, okay? Oh, and I'm so angry. I'm so upset. Forgiveness says, okay, I can't continue to be that upset. It's burdening me. It weighs me down. I can't think of anything else but that. So forgiveness says, I'm going to forget that, and for myself, I'm not going to carry that. Grace says, you know what? You're still a good guy, and I still believe in you because maybe you've done your part to come clean, and I still value the relationship. I see that you still have a heart. And so Grace says, I'm willing to play ball with you again. I'm willing to go back and do another business deal with you.
Another relationship.
Yeah. And so that's the big difference. If somebody squandered $50,000 from me and they showed no repentance, they showed no willing to bring the relationship back, then I will forgive, but I will not trust them. I will not trust them. I will not play ball again with them.
And that's easy to say, hun, when it's a business deal or a neighbor, you can just kind of ignore. But it's harder when it is a blood relative, when it's your spouse, when it's a child, when it's a parent. So, but to do this right, trust requires a repentant heart and a desire from both people to extend grace and make amends. So what we're going to do, hun, is we're going to kind of do step by step. If you're the offender, okay, I need you to perk your ears up. How do you rebuild trust? And then we're going to kind of take it from the offended. If you have been hurt or betrayed by someone, what is the steps for you to take? So we're going to kind of go from it for two different angles because honestly, hon, there's a lot of different people listening to this who are on all sides of the spectrum with this. They're wondering, could I ever rebuild this relationship again? And then there's others that are like, I'll never trust him again. So we need to really talk about that.
Right. So let's just think about this, hon, just for a second. The offender. So when I think about the trust fall, the trust fall is the offender typically is the catcher.
Yeah, who dropped them.
The guy who's down on the ground, and all of a sudden he has to catch the guy who's falling from the higher place, the ladder or whatever it is. And so the offended is the one who's going to get hurt, who's going to get dropped.
Yes.
The offender or the offender is the person who dropped them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just so that we have it nice and clean in our mind. Okay.
Proverbs 10:9 says, people with integrity walk safely, but those who follow crooked paths will be exposed. And so, I believe step one is for the offender is to take responsibility of the hurt you caused and admit you're wrong. This is the first step that is so hard because our pride gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no one likes to admit they're wrong, let alone take responsibility for hurting someone. But hun, this is such a critical step. In Andy Andrews' book, Mastering the 7 Decisions That Determine Personal Success, he talks about this very first decision, hun, is really the responsible decision where the buck stops with you.
Man, this is so key because this is actually where you see whether the person who was the offender, where their heart is.
Yeah.
If they're disengaged, if they think, well, I didn't really hurt anybody, I don't really have any responsibility here, that will help you to know whether you're going to ever get back into a trusting relationship with this person. So right off the bat, this is where we have to see that person go. And if you are the offender, man, this is, and strong dads, we say, own it, dude.
Yeah.
Own it. This
Swallow
is
your
the
pride,
own
buddy.
it part right here.
Yeah.
And admit that you're wrong.
Yeah. So that's step number 1, admit you're wrong and take responsibility. Step 2 is you got to be patient with the offended. Man, if you've hurt someone, rebuilding trust is not going to happen overnight.
No, when I just dropped from 2 stories up from your trust fall and my back is broken, I'm going to have to, take a little time to heal before I'm ready to jump back
and
up.
you don't get to decide how long that is, okay? Now, I'm not saying that if you've hurt someone, that person gets to hold this over your head for the rest of your life. I'm not saying that, and I'm going to work with the offended and saying that to them. But if you've heard us at the top of the show, forgiveness is a command, and when we hold on to unforgiveness, it's like drinking poison, waiting for the other person to die. We're all called to forgive our offenders, but that doesn't mean that we may ever want to play ball with you again. We may never want to get back up on that bleacher
We're not going to give grace.
And go and lay down. So be patient.
Yeah. Hon, this is an important part because the offender, he says, okay, I messed up.
Yeah. Let's get over it.
I want to do this. And he wishes it would all heal up quickly. But the offended they do have a part in forgiveness here.
Sure.
Okay. So like they might hold you hostage. Hun, we see this all the time. Somebody wants to be mad at the other person forever for something they did 20 years ago. And it's how long are you going to hold that?
Right.
Because if you're going to hold back your forgiveness, the person who's trying to build trust, they are stagnated.
Yes.
They can't do anything because you're not allowing them. You actually hold the reins on that.
Yeah. So God doesn't work on your timeline. So thank God, just be patient. Step number 3, we say this all the time. It's one of our favorite sayings: mean what you say and say what you mean. Because while you don't get to decide on the timeline, there is a lot you can do to make amends. So make sure that people can count on your word. Even in the little things, hon.
Hon, this is so big. I mean, from the idea that, okay, let's say I am the offender and I've hurt you, so you're the offended, and I recognize it. I said, hey, man, I'm sorry, and I start rebuilding my trust. And let's just say it was something like I went out on the marriage. And I want you to get over that right away. And so quickly, I am just assuming you're going to get over it, and
Right.
I go back to just doing not checking in with you,
Right.
Being
defensive.
somewhat secretive, or
Yeah.
at least not as transparent as you feel like I need to be, and like you just said, and I defend it.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, that if I say no, I'm not going to do this, then I have to fully be ready to share that and to make sure I'm exposing that idea that, hey, if this is what it takes to bring you back around, I'm going to do that.
Don't be surprised if it takes those around you a while to trust your word again. I mean, you made your bed. It's time to lie in it, So don't get defensive or angry when they doubt or question where you've been or what you're doing or if you're telling the truth, because it's been a while.
Yeah.
So how about number 4?
So step 4 then kind of runs off of that. The idea of transparency. Hun, this is hard. I worked with a couple recently, and it was a situation where they agreed to be totally transparent with each other. And so we talked about what that meant. And so we talked about, actually, they had the Life 360 app. They knew where each other was all the time. They had their phones wide open to each other. And in the moment, it sounded like a good idea to both of them. And then when life started to actually happen, it got tough.
Yeah.
And the gentleman actually said, I feel like you don't trust me. I feel like, and the point was, absolutely.
Yes.
That's right. That's what we're
You're
working
right.
through. And so the baby steps of this, and that's really what it was. And one of the statements was, how long is this going to take?
And you're like, I don't know.
And we said, I have no clue. If I could tell you that, I wouldn't have to be.
Yeah, we'd have a job.
Yeah, we would be good. So,
Yeah.
so the idea of being transparent, I will say, and somewhat of a counter to that, we do have to be realistic. If we're going to lord it over the person,
And respectful.
then we're struggling with the forgiveness part. Okay, and so I have to always look at the intent of the heart. And if I see, man, this guy's in here fighting and doing everything they can for this, they're not going to be perfect.
Right.
Okay. They are going to mess up. Maybe the wrong word. Maybe they said they'd be home in 10 minutes and they came home in 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Where were you? You were late.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh.
Come on. Extend the grace. Yeah. So give the offended the time to grieve and process their hurt. You're going to have to go first in sharing your heart and being transparent. Step number 5, be truthful in all your matters. Again, even in the little things, hon. If you were stepped outside of our marriage and you had an affair and were going to this woman's house on the way home from work, and then all of a sudden you became outed on this and you were trying to rebuild trust, even if you stopped at UDF for ice cream on the way home.
Well, no, come on. You wait.
You could do this. I could totally see you doing this.
Should I stop recording? Because there's a problem. I can't even stop at UDF.
Well, no, I'm not saying you
What
can't.
if I get you a malt too?
No, wait a second.
Okay, what do you say?
Here's the deal.
Is it UDF that's the problem? Because that's what I'm hearing.
No. Is what
Oh,
I'm saying.
UDF's not the problem.
Will you let me talk? Here's the point. I'm not saying that UDF is the problem. I'm saying that if you hide that from me, my mind is going to go in a million other places that you are other than UDF.
That's right.
And when it comes down to it, if you really are at UDF, then you need to own it. Hey, I stopped for ice cream on the way home. I was hungry. I couldn't wait for dinner. You may get a little reprimand like, oh man, you should have waited. But that is so much different than your wife thinking that you were being unfaithful to her.
Remember, if you are the offender, if you were the one that offended, okay, then you were the one who created the high sense of paranoia.
Yes.
Okay, and the paranoia means here that maybe it's just no big deal for me to swing off the highway and go get my little chocolate malt at UDF.
See, you're feeling guilty, aren't you?
I might be guilty there, okay? But the idea that I was the one who, as you said before, I made that bed, okay? Yep. And so I have to understand what my my wife in this case, what they're thinking, where their paranoia is, and their paranoia in their mind especially is very well founded. Yeah. They have reason to doubt.
And I hear this from guys a lot, especially guys. They don't like it being told they have to have their passwords shared or let somebody read their text messages. They feel like a teenager. Well, you're going to have to let them. You have nothing to hide, right? If there's no problem, then just be transparent and truthful.
Yeah. Okay, hon, can I just say at this point, if you are struggling with all of these things, if you're like, this is ridiculous, this is crazy, it's way too much, we already have a heart problem. Yeah. So I'm going to call you out right now. If you're listening to this and you're going, this is over the top.
Right, I can't do it.
What I will say to you is, you have a heart problem for the rebuilding and reconciling this marriage. Yeah. So please hear what I just said there. This is the stuff that we have to go through, and the faster we kind of just swallow that and get into work, we will get things done. Yeah. So let's do the last step of this, okay? The last step is we are going to make mistakes, right? We are going to make mistakes. And so step 6 is confess promptly. Yeah. All right? When you make a mistake, all right? And you think, oh, man, I forgot to call her, or I forgot to do this, or I forgot to do that. Own it right away.
Knowing her mind's going to go in a million places.
Yes, and these can't come with excuses. You know, well, you know, I didn't think you'd care, or it wasn't that big of a deal, or I had to stop and go help my buddy out over at work. No, those are called excuses, and excuses will only heighten the level of paranoia by the person who was hurt.
Yeah. So own it before you're caught in it. None of us are perfect, and we all fall short. The Bible says we are in Romans 3:23. So instead of letting those situations fester in the road, quickly and appropriately confess your sins and mistakes. Don't throw up your hands and give up. Get back on the horse. Keep trying. God can use your mess ups, hon. I feel like when we combine our imperfections with God's amazing grace, I believe it rebuilds our relationships into something more beautiful and intimate than we ever had before. So, hon, we got so little time to talk about those that have been offended.
That's because I stopped over at UDF and got them all. Now I've messed everything up.
So let's go to the offended. If you're listening and you're like, well, yeah, okay, that's all good for him, but what about me? What do I do or if that person has hurt me?
Right. So if I was offended, so in other words, now I was the one who was dropped off of the ladder, okay? Yeah. So where is my role? So the first step that you have is... and this is why, again, we have such a strong subscription and belief in our Christian faith. Yeah. Because it is awkwardly weird and doesn't make sense on a human level. But when we talk about relationships, we go, wow, this is pretty amazing stuff. What would Christ do in this situation? And so remember that Christ is in you as a Christian. Remember, you are called to forgive. You are called to give people second chances. Yeah. You, especially in these marriage relationships where we've gone down the road to say, this is a very important thing to me.
But, hon, also in step 1, remember who you are in Christ. Your worth and value do not come from a person or thing. So take them off the throne. Make sure Jesus is the one you're leaning on and worshiping. Psalm 37:5 says, commit everything you do to the Lord. Trust him, and he will help you. So this is not because you are less than a person worthy of love or trust. Remember who you are in Christ. Step 2.
Okay, so step 2 is that idea when you have been hurt, okay, surrounding yourself with healthy people, with safe people. Yeah. I want to be cautious, though, hon, because sometimes these people can be telling us what our ears want to hear.
Itching ears,
in a wrong, non-Christ-like way. Right, and so I need people who are going to challenge me to get me back out on the course, back out into doing life. And so challenging me to live more like Christ, not more like the world might tell me to. And so I need to surround myself by good Christian counsel, pastors, friends of that nature who say, okay, hang on, where are you at right now? What's your level of hurt? What what caused all this? What is your
Yeah.
part now in allowing the healing to occur?
Yeah.
Remember, healing in a relationship, the two became one.
Yeah.
That means we're trying to heal the one relationship.
If it's a marriage relationship we're
Right.
talking about. So find someone neutral that will help you sort out the truth from the lies. Step 3, step back and let the emotions settle down before you make any kind of decisions. Be still. Know that he is God. Rest in him. Let the storm subside before you jump out of the boat and start swimming to shore, man. And hun, I would just say, let your words be few. You don't want to say or do something now you are going to regret later.
Man, hon, this is so
True.
hard. This is so
I
hard
know. It's
because
easier said than done.
These are the emotions that scream, and we feel so just vindicated and validated by letting the emotional scream come out. And so this is something that's very dangerous.
We've had people do some really scary, ugly
and,
things.
you know, we see this
in their
even in
pain.
parenting. Like, you know, your kids mess up, and next thing you know, you're like, you're grounded for 5 years.
Yeah.
Well,
Or you're thrown.
in the
your
moment, it felt like the
fist
right
through the
thing to
wall.
say.
Yeah.
And now you've got to go rebuild that. And so the same thing happens in our relationships. So
Yeah.
please understand what your emotions look like.
Yeah.
Understand when you are doing things that, I'm kind of acting out of an emotional mindset.
Yeah, yeah. Step 4, seek wise counsel to work on the forgiveness process. Because remember, forgiveness is not letting the offender off the hook. We can and should still hold them accountable for their actions. But remember, unforgiveness is poison inside you. So you've got to get some help for that. So seek wise counsel. Step 4.
Yeah. And so step 5 is that idea of, I mean, it is forgiveness. I mean, that's the way I understand forgiveness, the idea that you're not going to seek revenge. And
Yeah.
I want you to hear that word revenge. You know that you're being revengeful when you delight in their
misery.
misery. When you see their shortcomings, well, they had that coming to
Yes,
them.
yeah.
Okay. Karma, baby,
Yeah.
karma. You know, these kind of
think I've
things.
heard that
When
before.
you delight in that, you're still not in a forgiveness mode.
No.
And so ultimately, we have to go, you know what, I've got to be over that hurt. I don't want to carry
Yeah.
that burden. And so I don't wish anything bad on this person.
Yeah.
If you are still enjoying the revenge, if you're still thinking about the revenge, you, as the
Not a
offended
place of
one,
forgiveness.
are still not in a place of forgiveness.
Yeah. Keep your character integrity high. Don't stoop to the level of your offender. I tell folks this all the time. Like, when it comes down to it, what are your kids seeing in you? What is your family and friends seeing in you? Take the high road. Here's step 6. Protect yourself from any kind of physical, emotional, or spiritual abuse. Forgiveness does not mean you become a victim or a martyr. Trust may not be possible in this relationship if the offender does not take steps to rebuild the trust.
Yeah, man, that is tough because that's the hard part when we are actually in the coaching aspect, when we see that we've been working on this relationship, and one of the persons involved is just not showing a
yeah.
willingness to build the trust. And
Yeah.
so those get to stalemates, and sometimes,
Yeah.
you know, God gives us over to a hardened heart. And what that means is he doesn't turn your heart hard. He allows it to go where you're allowing it to be. And he doesn't convert it.
Yeah, Psalm 56:3 says, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. That's when you really have to look up and trust the Lord and the steps to take, because no one on earth here has the answers, but the Lord knows. Step 7, rebuilding trust in a relationship takes 2 people and it takes time. So be patient with yourself and learn to trust yourself again. Sometimes, hon, I hear the offended all the time don't even trust their gut anymore, doesn't even trust their heart because they've made mistakes and repeated these offenses over and over again with their offender. Search your heart for any wrong or hurt that you've caused in the relationship and own it. Extend grace to the offender if there is real effort being made. And this is huge. Are we ever going to let go of that hurt? Are we ever going to trust again?
Yeah.
You know, a grace, we want to be given grace, right? Then we need to extend grace.
Yeah, this is the beauty of the Christian faith, that grace is part of what keeps us in the game. It's not you've sinned one time and you're done. We get to keep coming back each day. Step 8 is just the idea that we sometimes confuse this, that if I forgive somebody, I have to forget. No, we're not asking. In fact, you're not called to forget, because forgetting would not make you work on building the trust with that person. Okay, so you are going to continue to remember the hurt that happened. What we're hoping here and praying for is that both people equally remember what happened, and then set up the proper boundaries and means to not let that happen again. So we do not ask for anybody to forget a past hurt. What we ask is to set the life up in a way that you're not going to repeat the hurt.
I want to clarify something, hon, because you did say something earlier about letting them forget. I think your point was getting them off the hook, like letting them off the hook when it comes to
right. Yes.
Rebuilding that trust. Not that you're physically going to forget it all the time. Because emotional healing occurs when we can think back to the offense and not be plagued with bitterness, fear, and anger.
Yes. And then we've seen some beautiful, beautiful scenes of that, some
we
sides
have.
of that. We've shared that, my mom's story, other people in our life, the story of Christ, the idea of the amount of offense that he took. He had every reason, every human reason to be angry, mad, and disgusted at the Jewish people at the time. And he basically gets up on the cross and says, please forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah.
That idea, that forgiveness, and then he's willing to continue to extend that grace to us. In other words, he continues to want to do life with us every day.
Yeah.
Let us challenge that. God's grace is extended to us when he knows that we give our heart to him. Okay.
True.
If my heart is cold to God, oh, I don't know about this whole God thing, I don't know, that's ridiculous, then God allows that to be hardened and cold. But when we say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, I am repentant, I see that I have offended you, God extends that grace and continues to want to go and play another day with us.
Yeah. So if our show today hit a nerve, please give us a call. I was praying for this show all week because I do feel like it's such an important topic. If you don't have to sit in the hurt or be chained by unforgiveness, does that mean the relationship will be restored? We can't answer that because, as we've said earlier in the show, trust is a two-way street, and it takes work on the offender's part to rebuild that trust with those they've hurt. Hun, that's why AA, Celebrate Recovery, steps 8 and 9 are about identifying those you've wronged and attempting to rebuild trust and make amends. So even international recovery groups recognize that if you don't work to forgive yourself and others around you and try to restore trust with those you love, you will never have everlasting peace.
Yeah, powerful stuff.
yeah.
Ultimately,
I have a feeling this is going to be a show we give for homework a lot.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's just got great, solid stuff that doesn't change with the times.
Yeah.
These are just ways of living that are not going to change like so many other things do in our life with styles and what's the latest trend. So anyway, hopefully the show, you find it beneficial. As we've said before, continue to listen to our shows, our podcasts. If you enjoy and appreciate the message that Rock Solid Radio is putting out there, please share it on the hosting site that you listen from, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, any of them that you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and continue to share these shows. These are the kind of messages that we feel like are essential to our families and to our marriages and to our community in this country. So please listen. I would like to say thanks to Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance again for the support that they provide for Rock Solid Radio. And Hun, anything you want to close out with?
Hey, just like you said, hon, everything else is shifting, sinking sand. You got to build relationships on the rock. So we thank you again for listening to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. For help or more information about what you've heard on today's show, contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-ROCK. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, Maxwell Construction and Mansfield Insurance Agency. If you have questions you'd like answered on our show, or you want to chime in on something you heard, go to our Facebook page, Rock Solid Families. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and for my husband Merrill and I, thanks for tuning in to Rock Solid Radio, building a stronger community, one family at a time.